the National Party released its list. It is a list of not just candidates who will definitely win their seats, but also it's a sort of changing of the guard. It's really Chris Luxon's opportunity, I imagine, to stamp his personality on the party and the kind of people he wants beside him should he win the election. Talk to us about this. Obviously, a former National Party apparatchik and the founder and coordinator of both the Taxpayers Union, the Free, I think he's involved in the Free Speech Union, and obviously Kiwi Blog is David Farrar. David, welcome to the show. Did you have something to do with the Free Speech Union as well, the setting up of?
Not really. I was too overcommitted, and I sort of supported them benignly, I guess. But I actually then did join up and get active when Massey University banned Don Brash from the campus. When it was the two Canadian provocateurs, where I thought, look, it's wrong of Auckland Council to ban them, etc. You know, it was slightly more removed to me. But when a former National Party leader gets banned from talking on campus, I thought, okay, no, I need to now get involved. So I'm not on the board or anything, but I do help them out and am somewhat involved with them. But I wasn't one of the founders because basically I'm busy enough.
No, fair enough, and you are. Listen, the other thing you talked about over the weekend, and you're obviously very close to this, is the release of the National Party's list. Now, the reason why that's so important in the scheme of things is, at the moment, if there is an election held today, National and ACT would win, and this would be the formation of the next government, and the people at the top of that list, presumably, would be our new cabinet ministers in a variety of new portfolios. From your point of view, what was the overall philosophy? Well, no, first question, I guess, is who makes up the list? Because although I've said this is a chance for Chris Luxon to imprint his personality upon the incoming hordes, is it his sole role, or does it belong to the National Party itself?
It belongs to the National Party. So there are representatives from the regions. The board of directors all sit on the committee. I think the deputy leader's on the committee too. But having said that, let's not pretend it's sort of a simple people vote 10-8, this is where they go. A leader can be very persuasive, etc., because they're the person who have to go sell the list, work with the caucus, etc. It doesn't mean the leader will get their way on everything, but generally on the stuff that's really important to them, they will have an outside voice. And there's a lot, there's a formal meeting, but there's hours and hours and hours of phone calls and conversations beforehand between the president and the regional chairs especially, to try and come to a consensus on the overall shape of the list. So the actual meeting seems to be a bit more into where people get placed exactly. There's usually been a bit of a consensus beforehand about, things such as the shadow cabinet tends to take the top, 20 spots, and then you rank people after that.
So, and I assume, you tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong, that there's some sort of regional, ethnic, gender balance that's sought as well, yeah?
They do. All those things, gender, to a degree age, certainly ethnicity, and certainly regional balance. But, and this is where National has a real challenge, is they haven't been dealt the best hand by their electorates. As you will know, Michael, the National Party has almost no head office control over local selections. It's 60 local party members. Unlike in Labour, where the leader can almost veto someone getting through, I'm pretty sure you may not have been Jim Bolger's first choice or second. And what happens is Luxon says, I want a more diverse caucus. And the party members certainly listen to that. But then when it comes to who do they select for their local candidate, They might say, well, we really like this guy. Yes, there's a woman we could go with too, but there's 69 other electorates that can do that. And they all meet individually. So what's happened is that the electorate selections haven't been particularly diverse. The party list is much more diverse. That's their chance to make it up. Of the 10 sort of winnable list spots, 7 of them go to women. There's ethnic minorities there. But the other problem National has, but it's a good problem, is they may win lots and lots of electorate seats off Labour. Now, that's great for a party because you like to win electorate seats. It gives you profile in the community, it gives you resources. But that makes the diversity a bit harder. The more electorate seats they win, the fewer list MPs they get. And you have this weird thing, and this has been every election under MMP, if list candidate, you're almost hoping that we don't win as many electorate seats because it increases your chances of coming in.
I'm conscious of that, and that's the odd thing. Although on Saturday night, on election night, there'd be a whole series of list candidates sitting on the margins, not just of National but other parties as well, really, really keen that other people fail because that's the only way they'll get into Parliament. It's an odd thing.
Or their party vote loss. And National, sort of in the recent polls, has been around 35%. That might give them sort of 44, 45 MPs. If they can lift that to sort of 38% or so, that's really going to help them with the diversity because it will get them an extra sort of four or so list MPs.
Now, the other thing about the list that strikes me is where do you've said it absolutely right. So who's going to win these seats? I'm interested in your analysis of this, David, because can I just take you to the top 3 seats? There's Christopher Luxon, who's going to win botany. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty clear. In a funny sort of way, though, I think it's wrong. Well, I don't think it's wrong. It's probably going to be very difficult for Christopher Luxon, if he is the Prime Minister of New Zealand, to also be a constituency MP. So I guess there's always, once you get into that position, the desire to go on the list. He's decided not to, fair enough. Now, Nicola Willis is standing for Oharu, and Chris Bishop, she's number 2 on the list, and Chris Bishop, the young thruster from the Hut, is number 3 on the list and standing for Hut South. In your assessment, do you think either of those seats can be won will be won by Nicola Willis or Chris Bishop?
I don't think anyone can win Oharu of Labour, Nicola Willis, but I think you have to be realistic. The majority is 12,500. That is a huge majority. That's regarded as well beyond safe. Wellington, even Oharu has gone quite red. The Labour Green vote was 60% there at the last election. And Greg O'Connor, look, he's not a high flyer in the Labour Court. In fact, he's the least promoted Labour MP. He hasn't really been, I think he's an assistant speaker now. For some reason, he's on the outer with them. But he isn't a terrible local MP. He does do the electorates well. So Nicola is a superstar candidate, but she's not taking on a super weak Labour candidate, and it's a left-leaning seat, and it's a 12,500 majority. Hut South is much, much closer, and each one I'm actually doing a series of posts on a subscription basis. I just did Hut South a couple of days ago. I deemed it too close to call. In a way, it shouldn't be winnable for National. Again, it's a very red-leaning seat, but at the last election, Christopher Bishop got 90% more candidate votes than his party got. So for every 100 people who voted for National, 190 voted for Chris Bishop. And he still lost by 3,000 because basically...
Well, that's not much, 3,000 last election, is it really?
It is not a lot. Ginny Anderson got 97% of the Labour vote. So for every 100 people who voted Labour, 97 voted for Ginny. Bishop is probably the most active electorate MP, even though he's now a list MP I've seen. He does like 10, 12 events a week with every school, every business, etc. But Ginny Anderson's no slouch either. She knew she had to really put everything in to win it. Labor desperately want to keep their seat, so you have cabinet ministers there every day almost, well, certainly several times a month. They've made major funding announcements, etc. So they're throwing everything at it. I think Bishop has to maximise his appeal as much as he can, as in 190% of your party vote. You can't expect anyone to do more than that. So it's really going to come down to how close that party vote is. National's obviously been better than last election. The other factor too, I guess, is Chris Bishop's become National's campaign chair. And because it's a more aggressive, high-profile role, he might not attract quite the same level of cross-party support as he did last time. So I think it's going to be like, I would think, a few hundred votes in it. I think it's going to be incredibly close, but certainly winnable. Well, Ohio, I have trouble seeing that one.
Okay. Now, as I go down the National Party list, though, with the exception, therefore, of Nicola Willis and Chris Bishop at 2 and 3, and then I guess Paul Goldsmith is number 5. He's standing in Epsom.
You've forgotten, as everyone does, that Shane Retty is a list MP at the moment.
No, I know that, but I'm expecting him to win Whangarei.
Yes, he will.
Yeah. It was only because of the red tide or the Jacinda tide at the last election that went that way. Epsom is your number 3 on the list because Paul Goldsmith won't win Epsom. It will be won by David Seymour and the deal that we do. And then we go through...
Now, National could not win that seat even if they tried.
Yeah.
It's very Seymour territory.
Yeah. Okay. And then we've got Louise Upston, who's done very well to get number 6 on that list. She's the MP for Taupo currently, as I understand, so she's going to win it. Erica Stanford, who I think is a Prime Minister in waiting, is going to win East Coast Bays. Matt Ducey is going to win Waimakariri. Simeon Brown, Pakuranga. Now, Judith Collins, Papakura, that's her seat, yeah?
That's her seat. She's a very good local MP. I don't think she has any worries there at all.
Mark Mitchell, Whangaparoa, that's his seat as well too, isn't it?
Yep. Pretty safe seat.
Todd McClay is going to win Rotorua. Melissa Albert's not going to win Mount Albert. So once I start playing that game, and then Jerry Brownlee, just for listeners at home, is only standing on the list. He's not standing for Ireland, but there he is at 14. I'm looking at new MPs coming in, so that aren't already there. I'm assuming one of them will be Nancy Liu, this Asian accountant from Auckland, yes?
Yeah, she's the highest ranked non-MP on the list, so that's a very clear sign that they wanted to get in. And unless National sort of dropped back into the low 30s or had won an extra 5 seats beyond what you expect, she should come in. Okay,
and then you've got 3 young women, well, younger, Suze Redmayne from Rangitikei, Katie Niman from Napier, Catherine Wedd from Toki. Actually, can I just talk about those 2 Bay seats, Napier and Toki for a second? Yeah. It seems to me, I think Catherine Wedd will street home in Toki and she'll win easily. But I'd say that Katie Niman's going to pick up Napier, wouldn't you?
Well, I can't actually comment on that because we finished polling that seat last night for the Taxpayers Union, and they are releasing that result at the debate they are hosting, and it's going to be a live broadcast with the working group they're in partnership with on Tuesday night. So,
right. It's going to be simulcast here on the platform tomorrow night as well.
Excellent, yeah. So you find out tomorrow night. But of course, the thing is, Stuart Nash has retired. He was a very popular local MP, certainly at first, etc. Yeah. So that certainly, is quite a major factor in that seat.
Well, it's not just that. Katie Niman's not a stupid candidate. I mean, she comes from a well-established Hawke's Bay family. The name itself is a bit like Tremaine. And then there's also...
Buses rather than houses.
Yeah, and then there's also the upset that's been experienced in the Bay as a result of the recovery, the Cyclone Gabriel recovery. I've had the Mayor of Napier on a couple of times, and boy, she's not a happy lady. So, it'll be an interesting poll result. Can I just press at you by saying it will be an interesting poll result, David?
It will be interesting. We've also asked about what people think about the cyclone recovery and about lowering the speed limits, as well as the usual questions we do, such as what's the biggest issue, who will you vote for, can you even name the candidates? That's always an interesting one because, if someone that doesn't even know your name, you've only got a few weeks left.
That's right. Well, you're a stirrer, David, asking those questions. I can see which way you're going, mate. Now, then I've got... So what I'm saying is the National Party are trying, obviously, to make sure that they can't be accused of being completely ethnically unaware. They've got Tama Potaka, who won Hamilton West in the by-election at 24, and the next is Agnes Loheni, who I understand is already a list MP. She's a Pacific Island lady, yeah.
Former list MP. She didn't get back this term, but yes, she's a Pacific Island lady from South Auckland. She stood in one of the South Auckland seats, I think, last election.
And then this is where it gets interesting. You've got Maureen Pugh from West Coast Tasman at 26. Now, she has been the constituency MP there, and then obviously much reviled, I have to say, by certain leaders. I think Mr. Bridges, for example, didn't like her. She's quite high on that list. What is this key to her resilience, can I just ask? Is it being in the South Island?
I think it's partly South Island, partly she is one of the rare rural voices we have. Well, you have a number of rural seats. The MPs in those seats don't necessarily have strong rural credentials. I mean, Todd Muller did, but he's retiring, etc. Barbara Courager does, but she was disqualified from being the primary industry spokesperson due to conflict of interest. So it's partly the seat, but partly also she did have some pretty horrible things said about her.
She did.
She stayed quiet. She's been loyal. She's been a hard worker, etc. So I think that's Christopher Luxon saying, let's actually look after our MPs. Only one current MP doesn't really get a winnable spot, Michael Woodhouse, who's pulled out.
I'll talk about that a second. And then the next four I'm interested in. Names we've never heard of. Emma Chatterton, who's standing for Remataka and won't win it. James Christmas, who's a lawyer, from what I can work out, and a writer, who's on the list only. Dale Stevens from Christchurch Central, and Siva Kalari from Manurewa. Now, somewhere along those lines, the line will be drawn, do you think, as to who gets in and who gets out, because there's a whole series of people after them who are going to win their electorate seats. Is that right? Have I got that right?
I think that's very much right. Around Emma and James is where the line's likely to be, subject to, as always, where the party vote ends up and how many electorates. Emma is, she's a highly placed new candidate. She's well thought of. She works in sort of a social innovation space in Ramataka, and she's very close to Chris Bishop, the campaign chair. They've done a lot of campaigning together. She certainly seems like, even if she doesn't make it this time, as a very good MP. James Christmas is one to look out for if he makes it in, because he could go straight into the cabinet. He worked as a senior advisor to Christopher Finlayson, the Attorney General. Now, Finlayson's no stupid person in himself. He's appeared before sort of the Privy Council 15 times or something. And I think he described James as the brightest person he's ever worked with. So that's pretty high praise there. So if James makes it in, certainly he'll be someone to look out for.
Can you explain something else about the list to me before we talk about Mr. Woodhouse? You've got a whole series of MPs. Here they go. Joseph Mooney from Southland, Simon O'Connor from Tamaki, Scott Simpson Coromandel, Stuart Smith Kaikoura, Sam Uffindale Tauranga, Tim van der Molen Waikato. Now, they're a long way down the list. If there was just based on the list, they'd get nowhere near it. They'd rate from 53, I've just said, to 58. Miles Anderson would be another one at 59. He's the Waitaki candidate. They're all expected to win their seats, obviously. Why are they even on the list?
They're on the list because Nationals found out the hard way that if candidates aren't on the list, they don't tend to push the party vote so hard, and that it provides bad incentives. But having put them down there, as a clear signal, you're expected to win your seat. National just likes the idea that all their candidates are on the party list. It's sort of a cultural thing. There's also a wee bit of not airbrushing, but some of the media, not you because you've been doing the thing going through work out who's going to win, but some of the media, some of the public probably just look at the top 20, 30 on the list and think, that's quite good, I like those there, and don't take into account that some of those people ranked down there in the 50s are going to come in and take spots away from those on the list because they're going to win the election. So this is what both National and Labour do, is you often put your candidates who don't add a lot to diversity but have safe seats down the bottom.
Okay, so which leads me to the next question. As I look at those, would I be taking, just quietly, another reference from this if I was Joseph Mooney, Simon O'Connor, Scott Simpson, Stuart Smith, Sam Uffindell, Tim van der Molen, that I'm not going to be in any cabinet or anywhere near it after the election because my list ranking is so bad?
It's not automatic. I would say it depends what year you came in. Joseph Mooney is just a first-term MP. Etc. So I don't think he would read it as that. I think he would read that as I'm still in my first term. I think the others would read it as they're unlikely to be in cabinet, very much so. And it doesn't have to be that way. The list ranking of cabinets isn't the same, but the reality is, you have 20 places in cabinet. If you have one or, God forbid, two coalition partners, they could take 4 to 6 places, and you've already got a lot of those candidates up there in that top 20 already ahead of you.
So I guess if I was particularly Scott Simpson, Simon O'Connor, Stuart Smith, I'd be thinking about retirement, and I guess in a funny sort of way I've been encouraged to do so by this list ranking, haven't I, for the next election?
Not every... Okay, most people do want to be a cabinet minister, but also you've had people, Shane Ardern had a very happy 18 years there, happy being a voice for his electorate, rural New Zealand, etc. So I don't think it's a bit harsh to say this is a sign you should retire. I think it is a sign, though, that, they're not in line at this stage. Things can change, though. If you get into government and you're a select committee chair and you do a really great job, that can sort of put you back on that track to maybe being a minister outside cabinet.
Sam Uffindell. Now, he's obviously upset the liberal media of this country, but the really interesting thing is that he is not speaking to any of the media, including to us, and he's been told not to. He doesn't want to get into more trouble, I think was his direct quote. Can I just say, you can't hide MPs forever, can you? Particularly constituency MPs. He's got to talk to his own local electorate, for God's sake, a newspaper or the Bay Post or Times or whatever it is. And obviously, because you're trying to get elected into those areas. How long can the National Party keep on protecting Sam Uffindell?
Well, I think he does talk to media. It will be local media, and he'll probably just say, I want to just talk about local issues, etc. There's a view in probably all of the political parties that local media is good, but if you're on the television news, it's never because you've done something good. We don't want backbench MPs on the television news. We don't want them on the front page of the Herald or stuff, etc. So it's no big surprise, and they will justify it by saying, well, he's actually out there meeting the people. He doesn't need to go through the media filter, etc. He's out there meeting his constituents.
Okay. Now, Michael Woodhouse, was he on the list, do you think? Would you like to speculate?
I don't know. It would be total speculation, but I suspect it was sort of probably in that late 20s to early 30s, the potentially get in, but far from guaranteed. I think it's fair to say this could have been handled better because, as I said, you tend to start having conversations and some planning around this some weeks before the formal list ranking, And if the consensus was, look, you've been a great minister in the past, we really do value you, but the simple factor is you've had a go, we need some more diversity, you haven't got a seat, you've been a list MP now for 5 terms, thank you, time to go. That would have been a good conversation to have 2 weeks ago, because he could have announced that he could retire, he could have a valedictory speech, etc. So I don't know why that didn't happen. Maybe they did get to list ranking and they were planning to rate him higher, but they just then realised there simply isn't room. But, it's unfortunate to see someone who's been a very loyal MP for a party sort of end up, ending their career in not the best way.
No, not at all. And I think it's queered National's pitch in a big way, particularly in the Dunedin area, because there's now no one in Dunedin, or even I'm thinking Otago, that's on the list. I mean, you've got to go up to Waitaki to Miles Anderson to find someone. So, and he's 59th. You would have thought they would have tapped him on the shoulder long before they constructed the list, wouldn't you?
Yeah, as I say, it may have just been they got to list ranking and there was a bit of a fight, and that's the way the cookie crumbled. But, it definitely would have been better to have had conversations earlier. ACT, you have to give some credit to. They demoted 2 MPs down the rankings, and they also had 2 pull out, and none of them said a thing publicly about disappointment. They just said, well, yep, we're team players, we need to get new people in, that's part of it, etc. So there is a way you can demote current MPs without it resulting in a bad story.
Yeah, I guess the thing is but you're going the other way, aren't you, in terms of polling ratings? So even if you have been demoted down there, you've got a pretty good chance of getting back.
Yeah, well, National's polling around 10% higher than last time,
I suppose that's true. Yeah. And just before I came on the show, David, I was looking at the polling rankings. For those of you who want to catch up with it, there's a very good Wikipedia page just on putting all the pollings together and making the comparisons. I guess there won't be any national polling done till next month, because it seems that all the August polls are out, so there'll be more in September. But you can't read those polls and not suggest there's going to be a change in government. And I might be in the wrong part of New Zealand to be able to make that call. I know I am. But that movement has been abroad for quite some time. Is that the perception you're picking up in the North Island?
There's definitely a mood for change. It's probably more a matter of what will be the change to. Labour's problem is their voters are sort of going a bit everywhere. They're going partly to New Zealand First, partly to the Greens, partly to the Māori Party, partly to National, partly to ACT. Now, if they get enough people going to the Māori Party and the Greens, and say New Zealand First gets 4%, etc. There's still definitely options where you get centre-left government. It'd be a very different government to this one. It would be much more chaotic. But you have got options there, because you've still only got 2 or 3 seat majority for the centre-right, and one bad debate, one blooper, can really bring that down. But country direction, you ask people, only around 1 in 4 people, 1 in 3 maybe, say they think New Zealand's heading the right way. What's going to be fascinating is how well does ACT do? Does New Zealand First stay over 5 even? Top picking up some support. The Māori Party sometimes has been up at 5%, etc. So there's a lot of uncertainty over what the government will look like, but is more likely to be a new government rather than a recombination of a Labour-led government.
Yeah, well, that's my assessment too. I've been waiting for the polls to catch up, to be honest with you, with that. But I did. When we had a chat back in February in January, you and I, and we were talking about the change that Chris Hipkins would bring. He certainly got that leap, and then he got Cyclone Gabriel, and he responded very professionally to that in a prime ministerial way. But you made the point that there has never been, in the history of New Zealand politics, an election won by a party that has changed its leader in the lead up to that election.
Yep, that's right. Holyoake lost in 1957, Marshall in 72, Rowling in 75, Shipley in 99, and English in 17. I think I've got them all.
Well, and then Moore and Palmer, remember?
Oh, yes, I forgot about that.
In 1990.
The last one who won taking over was Peter Fraser. And, of course, that was during World War II. When, there wasn't probably much of a move to change.
No, there probably wasn't.
Yeah. But history isn't destiny, but it certainly does point to the challenge you have.
David, thank you very much again for your insight. I look forward to that poll coming out in Napier tomorrow. Tell me about that. You're going to the debate?
No, I won't be there. I'll be working on other polls this week, etc. I'm not even quite sure what time it is. I think it might be 7:30, etc. But slightly sadly, the Labour candidate has pulled out of the debate. There will be New Zealand First and Green candidate there, on the basis that it will be two beltway. And it's really weird because, A, it's going to be the only televised debate, which means everyone in the electorate can actually see it.
Yeah.
But it's been held at this pub that got hit by Cyclone Gabriel. You can't get less beltway than that. He ended up getting a front page story about him refusing to attend the debate, etc. So it seems a wee bit of an own goal there.
Sure does. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon, mate. Look after yourself. Okay, that is David Farrar. He is the head of kiwiblog.co.nz. A story on that. I want to talk to you about that a little bit later on, but I will. Can I also just say, no one has noticed that a current list MP for National has been put in a position where she's going to lose her seat, and that is Harate Hapango. She was listed down at 31 after all the people that we've talked about, and the media have missed that completely.